kicking this webinar off, we can see our flow we'll be working with. So this webinar is currently split into two. We've got a presentation part and a live demo part. So in the presentation, we'll be covering the command finder, we're covering auto hide prompt, toolpath generation time, double click to end selection. And in the machine setup, there is an interesting fixture setting. And we will also be covering level manipulation and recent documents. In the live demo, we'll be covering wireframe revolve. We'll also be doing a sliding section view, a process hole automation. We'll do use toolpath transform. There will be some interesting things I'm going to be showing about backplot, and then bulk edit of common parameters on your toolpaths, and then levels and planes manager. So with that, that takes us to our next slide. So you can find your command finder on the home tab on the far right. So for example, you're going from an older version of Mastercam to a newer version, and for some reason you can't find a command, you can then use the command finder to be able to search. It'll then pop up a dialog box for you. And then with that, you can then just type in what you're looking for, and it'll give you the relevant search options. And that way you don't have to spend too much time looking for it. And then once you get used to the interface, you'll know where they are. Then you will most definitely have experienced the frustration when you're trying to select certain entities where you have your prompt to select those entities be in your way. So you have an option to auto hide that. So based on this, you can go and do right click on here and you can click auto hide. Okay. And here is the demonstration of how that works. So you can see once your mouse hover over that, you can see it just comes up. And this will work for all your auto hide prompts regardless of what function you're using. Okay. On the next slide, we have the toolpath generation time. So this will be displayed down here. That is for, it's good to see when you want to regenerate the toolpath on how long you will have to wait. So in order for you to be able to access that setting, you're going to have a machine loaded. Then you can go right click. You'll have this dialog pop up on your right. Under display options, you will find the setting. So next slide, we'll see you'll get this window. And then you'll have your toolpath generation time pop up there. And that'll show you how long it takes your toolpath to generate. So if you want to regenerate it, you can plan your accordingly. Okay. On the next one, we have a thing where you can double click to end the selection. So let's say you're doing an OptiRough and you're like that, you need to select multiple models. In this case, we've got multiple models on a jig. Then instead of going to your end selection, you can just double click in empty space and it would end the selection for you. It just improves a bit. It allows you to go a bit faster, and you don't have to click in selection there. Wherever your mouse is in empty space, you can double click. Okay, moving on to the next one. In your machine setup under the fixtures, there is now groups added. So for example, you can see all our clamps are currently selected because our clamps group itself is selected. So what makes it nice about this is, let's say you have an issue with your clamps, let's say your tool is crashing or something, you can either enable or disable it on that. And if you disable a single group, it'll disable all of them at once because it is under that group. If you want to enable it again, you just click that tick and everything in that group would be enabled. Let's say you've now just pulled this model in from the designers and all your models is currently on one single level. In order for you to be able to move those individual models or sets of models to different levels, you can go and select them as you can see here. And then you can right click in empty space and go and say change level. Once you click on that, you will be brought to this window here. In this case, you can either move or copy these entities that you've selected. In this case, we're moving it because we want it on a separate level. Use active level will always be on, so you can switch that off to be able to type in a number for your level, or you can go and select your level. Once you've typed in a number or selected it, you'll see its name will come up here. Then when you go to your most recent files, you will find 10 files that is here as your most recent. Now you have the ability to go here. You can see these are unpinned and this one is pinned. So in this case, if you decide you want a specific file to always show up, you can have it pinned here. Now that does bring us to the fact that you only have 10 files available here. So if you pin one file, you only have 9 files available that circulates. If you pin 2 files, you only have 8 files. Now that brings us to our next slide. This is how you set your file limit. So if you go to Files in Mastercam, go down to Configuration, you will have this window pop up here. Again, you go to Files, and then under that, you'll find the limit set to your most recent files. So if you want to go and change those files to, let's say, 30 for your most recent, you can go and change it right there. Okay, and that brings us to our live demo. Starting off our live demo, we will be showcasing the levels and planes managing. So that would be a new feature in Mastercam 26. So currently, as you can see, we have all these models on separate levels. So in that case, you can see if you want to go from clamp 1, you can go select to clamp 24. That will select all those clamps. And then the new feature will go right click and you can add them to a group. So once you can see it's now added to a group, you can also rename that group by double clicking on it. And there you have it. Now you can minimize that. And then you have your clamps in a group. So let's say you want your clamps separate in different levels, but you don't want them to clutter your space, you can add them into groups. Then you can also filter it. You can see I can currently filter my setting on these, and I can also filter it according to clamps. So only clamps will show up in here. Okay. You can also sort them based on level number, name, entity count, and these are all those. Coming to your planes, you have similar settings here. As you can see, I've got a group 1 already created. So if you drop that down, you can see I've got the planes in there. Also, you can create subgroups underneath your main groups, and then you can see you've got that as well. Okay, same as in the levels manager, you can go filter it according to groups, and you can also sort them according to all these. Okay, having a look here, you also have your system planes, which is in a separate group. These are all the planes that are here by default. They're in a separate group. Okay. Now that'll take us to the next one. So in this case, let's say you're busy modeling your part, as you can see here. Now you can see that's our end result. We want those teeth all the way around. But so in order for you to create those teeth, you would use this line and that circle. Now instead of recreating every single line all the way around, there's an easier way to create this. So in this case, we would use the transform, and we'll use the rotate function to get that right. So the entity we want to rotate is a circle. So as I've said before in our presentation, once you've got something selected, you can either say end selection, or you can just double click in empty space. That would end the selection as well. There you go. So currently I've got that set there. Now the number of instances I want to do is 12, and the angle I want to do it at 360. So 360. So you want to go divide by the amount of entities. That'll give you the amount of entities. Now currently our center point is set to here. So you're going to have to just select that. So you go there, select your center point, and we'll go there. That will now position that around your center point that you actually need. Keep in mind that depending on where your plane is, currently my plane is set to top. So as you can see here, the construction plane is set to top. So that means my rotation would be from the top plane. Okay, and in that case, you can now create your wireframe entities instead of manually go placing them where they need to be. So you can then go green tick on that. Then in order for you to just finish this, you can then extrude all these down and you'll get the shape as necessary. Now, in this case, let's say you've finished modeling your part, but you would like to inspect it. Now, I believe most of you should know that you will be able to go on your section view, and then this is the plane that I want to use for section view, as you can see right there. So I'm going to set that to section view. Now currently you cannot see anything because it's on the edge of the model. Now what's just nice about this is if you go edit, it allows you to edit the plane while you're in section view. So you can now grab your arrow, your Z arrow, and you can move it and you can view your section view like that. So if you want to slide it to check certain features, you don't have to move it and then see if it's in the correct position. You can just slide it around. So I'll just exit out of that, close that, and then just switch section view off. Next up, so for programming these holes, there is a nice feature called process hole. So I'm just going to navigate back here, go to Toolpath, you've got process hole. So the way process hole works, it will take it'll take a file that you have already programmed these holes in, and you can apply those settings to these holes that you currently have. So if I use that, you can currently see I need to select the holes. So what I'll do is I'll hold down Control and I'll select that hole. Now the reason why I didn't select any of the other models is because they're not one single model. It only does that on your current model. So if you want to select more, you just click Control and you select those holes as well. I do note while you're doing this, keep in mind that your project is safe, because if you select too many holes, there is a chance if Mastercam could crash depending on your computer strength. So I recommend start with a small amount of holes, apply it. Once you've got it, then you can select your other holes afterwards. Okay, now the way the whole process works is I have selected a file. So you can go in here, you select a file that you will need, of that you know that you've programmed these holes in previously. Once you've done that, this file of Mastercam would detect the operations in that file that matches these. So for example, let's say you've programmed this part before. Now you must do a production run. So you built a jig and now you want to reprogram them. You can just select that previous file. Now what I've noted is if you have, when you programmed your files in the previous version of in the other file of Mastercam, your plane reference must be all set to incremental when you want to apply these settings. So currently you can see I've got two Toolpath groups in that file. I've named them absolute and incremental. These names will be according to what you name your Toolpath groups. So I did testing. As you can see, absolute would give us issues. It wouldn't bring the Toolpath incorrectly, but if you use the incremental version of it, it will. So if you're having a look here, you can see it has a drill counter ball. That'll be my spot drill. Then it will do a secondary drill for the main hole. And then it'll do a helix bore with an end mole to open up the hole. So once you've got that selected, you can then set your clearance plane. So I'm going to just set that to incremental as well. In this case, it doesn't matter. It's just as high as it'll be. So I'm just going to set that, for example, to 20. In this case, make sure your file is saved. You can green tick. In this case, it's asking as well, these tools already exist. And then you go like add another. I'm like, no, that's fine. That's fine. There you have it. Now you can see that you have your drill. So you've got your spot drill that doesn't go as deep, only till there. You've got your main drill that goes all the way down, and you've got your helix. That's all pulled in from one single file where this part has already been programmed. Now, for example, you can make an entire jig plate with all your most common holes that you use in your workshop. And then if anyone programs a part, they can just go and reference that jig plate with all the holes in it. And then it'll pull the correct hole for that part. Now, if you want to go and select more holes, you can just go into parameters and you can go hold down Control and you can go and select more. And there you go. There you've got them. Now, let's say you want to make some changes to these files. So currently for all those 9 holes, we have one single operation. That's all we have. So if you want to be able to edit those, you can just make sure that it's selected, right click, and you can go, there you go. So you go to explode process hole. That will then break out the toolpath for you. So you've got your drill counter ball. So you can see that is your spot drill. You've got another drill counter ball, which is your main hole. You've got your helix ball. Now you can individually go and edit those parameters. That's how that goes. In this case, they'll take us to our next session. So let's say you have now programmed the side of this part here, and you want to go program every single one of them. Now, instead of copying them manually, we would recommend to use your toolpath transform, which is up here. Okay, so in order to use that, so we're going to be going up here, we're going to click on rotate. Now we want to use the tool plane. We'll leave that as that. So we don't want to copy geometry, we just want to copy NCI data. And then importantly, you want to say maintain source operations, meaning it keeps your G54 as G54. If you leave it on automatic, every time it makes a new instance, it'll go G54, G55, G56. Okay, once we've got that, we can set the entity amount. We can set that to 11. Now, the distance that we're traveling is 360 degrees, but we're doing 12 of those entities, so give us 30 degrees. And then we can just set this one as 30 as well. The rotation that we will be using is the top plane. Now, because it is using the top plane is around this point, it will rotate your toolpath around this point. So going here, you can see it's set to origin. We're going to go to define a center point. I've created a wireframe as our center point. So I'll just go up to auto cursor, drop that down to arc center. So if I hover over the arc, it will select the middle part. So I click on that. It gives me coordinates that specifies where that center is. Once you click green tick, it'll give you those toolpaths. Currently, you can see there's one missing because we have another toolpath. Let me just move that after. We have our main toolpath. We only copied it 11 times. So if you select both, you can see you've got all 12. So you can see there's a main one, and there is the copied one. Now, just some backplot features. So if you have a look here, I have manually created all of these just to demonstrate the backplot. So if I go on there, I've got all of them selected. Go to backplot. Now, some of you might know if you click the S key, you can jump forward to the next point. And then if you click the B key, you can jump back. Okay, now another interesting feature, which is probably the most useful, is if you take your mouse and you hover over this blue bar, that is where your timeline is, and you scroll up and down, you can see you can scroll back and forth on a toolpath. So if you still want to control the toolpath, but you don't want to click S and B, you can just go up here and scroll back and forth to be able to see your toolpath. So this is especially handy if you have a big toolpath. Okay. And then lastly, we have the bulk edit parameters. So let's say you have made all these and now you would like to change the coolant. Let's say you forgot to put on your coolant. So in this case, right click and you can go edit selected operations, edit common parameters. That will then give you a dialog box where you can edit all the common parameters and you can see which ones you have selected. So in this case, if you wanted, let's say, for example, change coolant, we can switch that on. And we can set, okay, we want to set the flood to on. And you can change all your settings here. So go green tick, go and set planes. So switch planes on. And then let's say I'm going to change the top plane there to front plane. In this case, the toolpath wouldn't work, but it's just an easy way because you can see all your top planes. So when you click green tick on that, and then green tick here, you can see all the planes has changed at once. So just change that back, right click, go to edit common parameters, go to planes and set that back to top. Green tick, and just regenerate that. And there you go. And that would be our live demo.